What happens when you spend your whole life building the perfect moment, only to realize it was built on sand? When the person you thought you knew becomes a stranger in the final hour. In a bustling city in Lagos, under a canopy of white roses and golden lights, a bride stood at the door of forever. Her dress gleamed. The guests waited. The groom smiled. But something inside her whispered, "Run." She had done everything right. She had loved completely. So why did her heart feel like stone? This isn't just a story about a wedding that never happened. It's a story about the moment truth breaks through illusion, and the courage it takes to walk away from what looks perfect, to find what's real. Her name was Grace. A daughter who honored her parents. A woman who believed in love. A bride who almost made the biggest mistake of her life. Welcome to Stories by the King, where every story carries a heartbeat, and every truth demands to be heard. Now, before we begin, where in the world are you watching from? Is it morning in Accra, evening in Johannesburg, or midnight in New York? Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Now, lean in. Because this isn't just about why she walked away, it's about what she walked toward. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of Grace's family home like liquid gold. She sat in front of the mirror, her mother's hands weaving white flowers into her braided hair. Around her, bridesmaids laughed and whispered. The air smelled of jasmine and joy. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt hollow. "You're glowing, my daughter," her mother said softly, her eyes wet with pride. Grace forced a smile. She had practiced that smile for weeks. It was the smile of a woman in love, the smile of a woman ready to start her life. But inside, her chest felt tight. Like something was pressing down on her lungs. She told herself it was just nerves. Every bride feels this way, right? Every bride wonders if she's making the right choice. But when her mother turned away, Grace's hand trembled as she reached for her phone. She scrolled through messages from her fiancé, Victor. "Today's the day, baby. I can't wait to call you my wife." The words should have warmed her. Instead, they felt cold. Victor was everything a woman was supposed to want. Tall, handsome, successful. He owned 3 businesses and drove a car that turned heads. When he proposed, our family erupted in celebration. Her father shook his hand and called him son. Her mother cried tears of gratitude. Grace's friends told her she was the luckiest woman alive. And she believed them. She wanted to believe them. Because if Victor was perfect, then maybe her doubts were just fear. Maybe her unease was just her own weakness. Maybe if she walked down that aisle, the emptiness would disappear. But last night, something happened. Something small. Something most people would have ignored. They were at the rehearsal dinner, surrounded by family and laughter. Victor stood to give a toast. He spoke about love and partnership and building a future together. Everyone clapped. Everyone smiled. But then, as he sat down, Grace saw him glance at his phone. His face changed. Just for a second. A flash of something, irritation, maybe anger, before he tucked the phone away. When she asked him about it later, he kissed her forehead and said, "Nothing, baby. Just walk." But his eyes didn't meet hers. And in that moment, a door opened inside her mind. A door she had kept locked for months. Now, sitting in her wedding dress, Grace felt that door swing wider. Memories flooded in. The times Victor cancelled plans without explanation. The way he snapped at waiters and drivers. The night she caught him laughing at a video of a homeless man, and when she said it wasn't funny, he called her too sensitive. She had buried these moments. Told herself everyone has flaws. Told herself love means accepting imperfection. But now, with the wedding an hour away, the truth clawed its way to the surface. She didn't just have doubts. She had evidence. Evidence of a man who wasn't who he pretended to be. And the question burning in her chest wasn't whether she loved him. It was whether she loved herself enough to admit the truth. The church was magnificent. White silk draped from the ceiling. Hundreds of candles flickered like stars. The pews were packed with people dressed in their finest, whispering and smiling, waiting for the bride. Grace stood in a small room behind the altar, alone for just a moment. Her father would come soon to walk her down the aisle. The music would start. The doors would open. And her life would change forever. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Her finger hovered over it. She almost didn't open it. But something, intuition, fate, the voice of her own buried truth, made her tap the screen. The message was simple: Grace, I'm sorry to do this today. But you deserve to know. Victor isn't who you think he is. Check the attachment. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her hands shook as she opened the file. It was a series of screenshots. Messages between Victor and another woman. Not from years ago. From last week. From yesterday. From this morning. The words swam before her eyes. Pet names. Promises. Plans to meet after the honeymoon. Once I'm married, it will be easier to keep her distracted, he had written. She's too trusting. She won't suspect a thing. Grace's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of a chair to steady herself. The room spun. The white dress that had felt like a dream now felt like a cage. She read the messages again. And again. Looking for some mistake, some explanation. But there was none. The woman's name was Sandra. She worked at Victor's office. And according to the messages, she wasn't the first. A knock on the door. Grace. It's time. Her father's voice, warm and proud. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Outside, 300 people waited. The caterers had prepared a feast. The band was ready. Her mother had spent months planning every detail. If she walked away now, there would be scandal. Shame. People would talk for years. Her family would be humiliated. Victor would be furious. He might deny everything. He might call her crazy. He might turn everyone against her. But as she stared at her reflection, Grace realized something. She had spent her whole life trying to be good. Trying to be the daughter her parents wanted. The woman society expected. The bride who smiled and obeyed and never caused trouble. She had swallowed her doubts, buried her instincts, and ignored the red flags because she was afraid of being difficult. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of disappointing people. But standing there, in that moment, she finally understood. The only person she would truly disappoint was herself. If she walked down that aisle, she wouldn't just be marrying Victor. She would be betraying every truth her heart had tried to tell her. She would be choosing the approval of others over the integrity of her own soul. Her father knocked again. Grace. She took a deep breath. Her hand reached for the door handle. But instead of opening it, she locked it. She picked up her phone and dialed Victor's number. He answered on the first ring, his voice bright with excitement. Baby. Are you ready? I'm at the altar, and who is Sandra? Grace's voice was calm. Cold. The line went silent. For 3 long seconds, there was nothing but the sound of his breathing. Then, he laughed. A nervous, dismissive laugh. Grace, what are you talking about? Today is our wedding day, don't start. Who is Sandra? This time, her voice cracked. Not with weakness, but with the force of a dam breaking. Victor's tone changed. Someone sent you something, didn't they? Grace, listen to me. It's not what you think. Grace hung up. She didn't need to hear the rest. She had heard enough lies. Grace unlocked the door. Her father stood there, beaming in his tailored suit, ready to give his daughter away. His smile faded the moment he saw her face. Grace. What's wrong? She handed him her phone. Watched his expression shift from confusion to shock to fury. He read the messages twice, his jaw tightening. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with pain, not for the ruined wedding, but for his daughter. Papa, she whispered, her voice breaking, I can't do this. He pulled her into his arms. Then you won't. What happened next became legend in their city. Grace's father walked to the altar alone. The music stopped. The guests leaned forward, confused. Victor stood at the front, his face a mask of forced calm. Grace's father spoke 3 sentences. My daughter will not be getting married today. The man standing beside me is not who we believed him to be. The wedding is over. The church erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Victor's face drained of color. He tried to speak, tried to explain, but Grace's father raised a hand. Leave. Now. And Victor, for all his confidence and control, had no choice but to walk away. The guests watched in stunned silence as he disappeared through the side door, his groomsmen scrambling after him. Grace emerged from the back room, still in her wedding dress. Her mother rushed to her, tears streaming. My daughter, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry we didn't see. Grace shook her head. You couldn't have known, Mama. I didn't want to see it myself. She looked around at the faces staring at her. Some looked horrified. Some looked confused. But a few, mostly women, mostly older, looked at her with something else. Respect. Understanding. One of her aunties stood up and began to clap. Slowly at first, then louder. Another woman joined her. Then another. Until half the church was applauding. Not for the wedding that didn't happen, but for the woman who had the courage to choose herself. Grace walked out of the church, her head high. The reception hall was already set up. The food, the music, the decorations, all of it still waiting. Her father put his arm around her. What do you want to do? Grace looked at the hall full of people who had traveled to celebrate her. She thought about the money spent, the plans made. And she smiled. A real smile, for the first time in months. Let's celebrate anyway. So they did. They turned the wedding reception into a party for Grace's freedom. The band played. People danced. And Grace, still in her white dress, stood in the center of it all, not as a bride, but as a woman reborn. In the months that followed, the truth about Victor came out. Sandra wasn't his only affair. There were others. Financial schemes. Lies upon lies. The business empire he bragged about was crumbling, held together by borrowed money and broken promises. The man Grace almost married was a house of cards. And if she had walked down that aisle, she would have been buried in the rubble. But she didn't. She walked away. And in walking away, she walked toward herself. Toward a life built on truth instead of appearance. Toward a future where her voice mattered more than her obedience. A year later, Grace stood in front of a room full of young women, sharing her story. I almost married him, she said, because I was afraid of what people would think. But the only opinion that should have mattered was my own. She paused, looking at the faces before her. Trust your gut. Trust the voice inside you that whispers when something is wrong. That voice is not fear. It's wisdom. And it will never lead you astray. The women nodded, some wiping tears. And Grace realized that her pain had become her purpose. The wedding that never happened had saved her life. And now, her story was saving others. Grace never walked down the aisle that day. But she walked into herself, and that journey was worth more than any vow spoken in fear. She learned that saying no to the wrong person is the same as saying yes to the right life. Not every perfect picture tells a true story. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what everyone expects, to find what your heart knows. Because a life built on truth, no matter how painful the beginning, will always outlast a life built on pretense. If this story moved you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments, have you ever walked away from something that looked perfect? Subscribe to Stories by the King, where every story carries a heartbeat, and every choice carries a lesson. This is Stories by the King, where truth heals, and courage finds its home.